Just look at this beautiful lake and all the trees around it. It's so serene here, and listen to that peaceful music. Are we going to be watching the Andy Griffith Show? Or is this another episode of Here Come the Brides? Wait, wasn't he in a Star Trek episode? Wait a second, this is a Star Trek episode, and this is the Star Trek Critic, where I already have to take a point for the captain and first officer beaming down together, and another point for not beaming down with security guards. As usual, the episode in Star Trek Critic starts with 100 points, and we are already down to 98 for The Paradise Syndrome, the last Star Trek episode to be filmed on location, and in my opinion, should have been the third season opener. Look at those pine trees. Look at that lake. Sounds like it's going to start singing a song. The plot of this show, the Enterprise is going to push away an asteroid that is going to hit the planet. But if they need to leave in 30 minutes, why did they even come down? They could have come after the mission was complete and stayed as long as they wanted, so minus one more point.
Size, age, and composition of this planet makes it...
Another point is lost for poor voiceovers, which you find a lot of on TV shows on outdoor sets from this time period. There it is, the monument that honors Opie's rock-throwing skills. They can't scan the inside, which is why they couldn't find Kirk in there. Spock states the obvious. Listen closely. Whenever they have bad voiceovers, you can hear the singing plants from Talos 4.
Asteroid, which is on a collision course with this planet, we must warp out of orbit within 30 minutes. Every second we delay...
Kirk wants to use the 30 minutes to explore. They find the Indian village, and as you can see, to attract a bigger female audience to Star Trek, the camera shows the men's butts. Spock is terribly wrong here. The Mohicans were a fictitious tribe, so minus 1 point. And the tribes they mention weren't always peaceful, but I think the calmness of the area is getting to Kirk for sure. They would have already known this if they scanned the planet ahead of time, and since they don't contact the Enterprise to get a more detailed scan of the obelisk, minus one more point. And of course, McCoy has to mention his complex as the Tahiti Syndrome from the 20th century. They might call it that in the 23rd century too, you never know. So where were Spock and McCoy when this was going on? Minus 1 point for them not sticking together. Now come the famous magical notes.
Kirk to Enterprise.
I don't think Kirk would have fallen in like that since the door slides open slowly like we see later, but he still could have stumbled. And then suddenly this peaceful planet becomes dangerous as he falls down the stairs and gets zapped by ancient technology so he can overact. And the music is good too. This is a much more suspenseful opening than a go-go dancer stealing Spock's brain. The next point is lost for Spock's captain's log talking down to the audience. And you never see these search parties. Plus, none were left behind with a shuttlecraft to look for Kirk, so minus one more point. So, will it work for Spock?
Spock to Enterprise.
Enterprise, come in, Mr. Spock.
It did not.
Aww.
So Spock's like, screw this, let's get out of here. Spock's mansplaining is a total waste of time, and both he and McCoy know it. If they left behind a rescue party like they should have, this scene would have never happened. The next point is lost for the asteroid deflector not being on top of a hill where it can aim in different directions. The last two episodes, he was saying, "Who are you?" And now these girls are thinking, holy shit, someone is coming out of the obelisk. And Miramani is now thinking, I get to have sex with a god. And it happened. He quoted his favorite Who song again, 3 in a row. Miramani quotes her favorite song. He may have lost his memory, but he's probably thinking this right now.
Well, I could stay a bit longer.
This captain's log states several hours have passed, so I won't be taking a point for this one. Scotty can't get the Enterprise to go to Warp 9 at all, and if they did, they would have shot past the asteroid in just a few seconds. Since it isn't traveling nearly as fast as this show claims, if an object that big was about 2 months from Earth, it is probably already in our solar system, which means even at Warp 1, they should get there in just an hour at the most, so minus 1 point for bad calculating. Although this village is close, they aren't related to Native Americans, so any differences we have to accept. Right now, Kirk just walked into one of their legends, and now they think he might be a god. Salish is very critical, but he does have a right to question what's going on. Kirk is trying to figure out what's going on, since he remembers being in space, and Salish is like, this guy is a con man. Now comes Miramani with a drowned kid. She said he fell into the water, but he's completely dry, so minus 1 point. And obviously, they don't have child labor laws in their village. Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation had only picked up recently on Earth when this show aired, so this would have been seen as a miracle to them. You never do see the little boy cough up any water. And that just sealed any doubts of Kirk being the legend they were told about. I'm not convinced the guest god would automatically take the position of the medicine man. He would have his own position, but it works in the story, and they probably thought that was what they were supposed to do. And now Salish is pissed. This is one of the rare times you see the scanner coming out of the console. Alright, you lovelies, hold together. Scotty quotes from his favorite movie. They magnify the old-fashioned way. Usually I take points for these rear shots not having Chekhov or Sulu, but this time it's correct. Chekhov is over there at the science station. This is an incorrect statement. If you stop engines, the ship will still drift. What he should have said was, stop all motion like it does. So, -1 point. Now we get to see Chekhov's butt. Yes! He's like, who said that? Look quick, a new prop for the 3rd season. This is the first time they actually fire from the deflector dish. However, it wasn't nearly enough. What they should have done was do more studies on the asteroid to find a weak spot. But they didn't, and they had 2 months to do it, so -1 more point. If this was filmed today, she would be naked, but she's not. Aww. Is she really that devoted to tradition, or just using it as an excuse to dump Salish? She lets him down easy by saying there are plenty of fish in the sea, and they would all love him. Their bead headbands are definitely from a souvenir shop. He should have quit while he was ahead, because look what happened when he asked if she would have chosen him. Aww. You know something's wrong with Kirk's head when she asks if he wants a bath, but he just wants to talk. They have a basic knowledge of how they got there, and that the secret of the temple was lost. Miramonte wants to take off Kirk's clothes, but Kirk still just wants to talk. He must have got hit in the head hard. Women bring him food. The wise man says the people want to rejoice in the god's name. This won't go to William Shatner's head at all, will it? And they come up with Kirok as his name. Did anyone ever get the feeling that he wasn't happy being a starship captain? But he's also in a bit of a panic, since he doesn't know how to save them. You'd think after 10,000 years they'd come up with a better name for the obelisk. Spock practically blows up the Enterprise to divert the asteroid, but it doesn't work, and as usual, Scotty always gets the best lines.
Parents, my poor parents.
This mushy scene means they are going to get married. The next point is lost, since after 3 years, they still haven't cleaned that mark off the monitor. Another point is lost, since Scotty says they have damage that can only be fixed in dry dock, and they did not call for another ship to help them out. Just too much Vulcan pride, I guess. McCoy gets his chance to tear into Spock, although he does tend to him as a doctor should too, because Vulcans are pretty stubborn about getting rest also. The next point is lost, since they mention that it takes 2 months to get back just too many times.
All you've been doing is staring at that blasted obelisk.
That comment actually isn't true. When McCoy leaves, Spock puts back in his porn tapes. Let's get back to the wedding. Salish has now turned into a peeping Tom, but he does have a reason to be upset. Over at the obelisk, Kirok practices his yoga, although I'm not quite sure what this position is called. He's pretty content right now, but he's also considered a god, and that could backfire any day, probably in 2 months, like they say every 5 minutes. Now comes the big fight scene where Salish confronts Kirok. Kirk has an obvious stunt double, so -1 more point. Here is proof that pole dancing can be used as defense. The secret is out. Not only does Kirk bleed, it's not even real blood. He doesn't know how to explain that one at all. Salish has suicidal tendencies, but Kirk walks away because he's not a killer, and unfortunately that will come back to haunt him later because Salish wasn't kidding that he wouldn't rest. Now Kirk and Miramonte are married. Back on the Enterprise, the next point is lost since it looks like only Spock is working on the writing, when they have an entire science crew on board whose entire job is exploration. McCoy helps us out with the countdown again. McCoy tells Spock not to feel guilty about the decision he made, but his bedside manner is also peppered with condescending remarks about Vulcan anatomy, so -1 point. Spock tries to rest, but then reflects how his ex-wife tried to have him killed, so he says, screw that, I'll study some more. This next scene is totally sexist. Shouldn't Miramonte also be allowed to dress just like Kirok? Yes! And wouldn't this also be the first interracial kiss? The lines they say are just a little too mushy for me. I'm happy. I'm so happy. He's gonna start singing soon.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty.
Here he talks of his dreams about being in a lodge that flies through the sky. This would actually add to their theory that he is some type of a god. Miramonte says she is pregnant. Will the baby look like his big brother? Kirk is now acting like a typical imperialist, bringing improvements to a less advanced society, who will later turn on him and accuse him of ruining their lives. Although I think since they already had fire, they probably knew how to make these lamps. Their mushy newlywed talk is interrupted by the weather, and nosy neighbors who expect Kirk to save them all. Here you can see bad wind-blowing dirt effects, so -1 point. You'd think that the symbol on his forehead would act like a key, like in other movies, but not this time. Baelish sees this as a chance to make his move. If Spock had the whole crew working on this project like he should have, they would have found out 59 days ago that those are musical notes, and that an ancient race called the Preservers dropped people off all over the galaxy, leaving special machines to deflect asteroids, which some historian on the ship probably knew the whole time, and might even know how to operate it, but Spock wants the credit all for himself, and this comment means they have to go back to the planet. Salish encourages the villagers to stone their god with rubber rocks. Has there ever been a time in Star Trek where you didn't see the woman's underwear? This is the director's idea, not the native inhabitants, so -1 more point. Looks like Salish is done with Miramonte. Look closely, special effects shows them beaming before the shadow appears. The next point is lost since the first officer beams off the ship while the captain is missing and McCoy didn't come down with a security team. The natives run. They're like, oh shit, he really was a god. Why is Spock trying to call himself? Check this out. They ask for Nurse Chapel and an emergency surgical kit, which they don't use to save Miramonte, so -1 point. And -1 more point for Nurse Chapel's tunic being just a little too short. Luckily, everyone in the galaxy speaks English, but I will have to take a point, since if you're being stoned with real rocks, you would have some serious cuts and bruises, and there are none on either of them. How could they say this on 60s TV? His brain is unimpaired, however,
His mind's a boy.
the next point is lost since this Vulcan mind meld took way too long for dramatics. If Kirk was dreaming about the crew on the Enterprise, it wouldn't take nearly as long. Kirk is okay, now they know what the obelisk is for, but first, an almost upskirt shot of a dying pregnant woman that they aren't trying to help because it will break the Prime Directive. Now for the magic musical notes. Watch closely, they look down before the door opens.
Kirk to Enterprise. Hi, Captain.
Luckily, the Preservers kept it simple once they got inside. Just push one button and it works. It's a good thing Scotty moved the Enterprise from this position, or there would have been a real big problem right here. The Enterprise crew saved the planet, but did they ever tell the natives how to operate the obelisk? We will never know. If Miramonte had bad internal injuries, why did he move her? Any doctor knows you can't do that, so -1 point. I hope he's far enough away so she can't hear him say this. Kirk's wife dies. He really did love her. He even grew in his sideburns just for her. She is very optimistic. Either she's faking not being in pain, or McCoy gave her some really good painkillers. The Paradise Syndrome would definitely have been a much better season opener than Spock's brain. It has science fiction, a native story, a love story, a good fight, Starfleet doing humanitarian work, and a tragic ending where a pregnant woman gets stoned to death by her own people. Something you can't find anywhere else except on Star Trek. This is also one of those few episodes that doesn't end with them laughing on the bridge. So, who were these almost Native Americans? Richard Hale earned his music degree at Columbia University in 1914. He has 150 screen credits to his name, including To Kill a Mockingbird, Bonanza, Here Come the Brides, and Escape to Witch Mountain. Rudy Solari played Salish and has 60 screen credits to his name, including The Outer Limits, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and The Incredible Hulk. He is of Swiss-Italian descent, headed the master's acting program at UCLA, but unfortunately cancer took him early. Sabrina Sharp was a Playboy bunny. Yes! Born in Ohio, she took to stage acting in New York, Then in California began acting on many of the 60s TV shows, starting with Gidget, and was also in I Dream of Jeannie. She married TV writer Bob Schiller and they had 2 kids. Then she pursued a career in the real estate development. She also ran for the California State Senate in 1972 and lost by only 700 votes. If she won, she would have been the first female state senator in the state of California. This Side of Paradise, one of the not-to-be-missed episodes of the 3rd season, gets a score of 72%. Thanks for viewing. Be sure to check out my other videos and playlists, and click that like button, the share button, the subscribe button, and I will see you again soon. Thank you for learning about Kirok. Next week on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Picard out. Picard. He is called the Picard.